Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids, and welcome to season 3 and episode number 342 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show here on the Crier Media Network. Yeah. Today, recording day is Wednesday, March 20th, 2024. Officially the first day of spring, my darlings. It's spring. Make sure you tie your slinkies to your running shoes.
Okay.
So you can bounce, bring. And it's going to be a lovely day here at the Beaver Lodge. We got some snow yesterday, actually. A little dusting. Looked like somebody sprinkled some icing sugar over everything, which is really nice. But today, officially, is the first day now that the renovations are going to start. They did come yesterday to do a walk around and an assessment, but today I hear is the first day that they're going to actually be stripping some siding off the house. And we have to decide relatively quickly what color we want to replace it. And I have a feeling that even though I'm going to get a say,
It's not going to be. You get a say. Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. I'll take that under advisement and consider it.
but it's going to be yellow. Sort of.
Kind of what it already is, though. Like,
I got him entertaining one of two other colors for about 22 seconds. But I think that was the extent of my powers of persuasion.
I'd paint it black.
They've
done that well.
Yes, we do have one that's if not black, very, very, very dark charcoal. And I'm just wondering, in the summer, how much heat is that to bringing in extra? So that's one of my my only hesitations for darker color.
Well, you know how they have like the solar tiles. Solar City sells the tiles that are guaranteed for like 50 or 75 years or something like that.
Oh,
And they look like regular tiles.
okay.
So the solar tiles, not panels, but tiles. So you redo your roof in these things. So it's a roof. Your entire roof is covered in solar cells. I'm like, well, why don't we just put solar cells on the sides too? So you could generate energy to cool it in the summer with the heat pump, which also pumps in cool air.
Right. Yeah. We're probably moving to that eventually. Oh, boy. Okay. Big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and CanadianTarot.com. And as you can hear, kits and cubbies, with me as always is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. So let's ask him, how's your mental health doing today, sir?
When I first woke up this morning, I was feeling very groggy and almost hungover, which is weird because I didn't have anything to drink. I had 2 pints and a tipple of whiskey, a dram. I didn't even finish that dram. I poured a dram when we sat down to record, and I drank maybe a third of it, and then was sitting on the coffee table, and the doggy came over to say hello, and that giant whip tail sent the glass flying.
Oh no!
Didn't break though. Didn't break. So yeah. So
that was still some good whiskey.
Oh yeah. But the thing is, I don't understand why I woke up feeling so this morning. But it's as time goes on, I take Miss Thang out for her morning constitutional, and she normally wants to stay out a little bit longer. But this morning she was like, "No, I'm ready to go back in. It's cold out." It was -16 with the wind chill, so she kind of dragged me back into the house after. We drag her, we bring her down, we get her into the lobby, and she sees a cat, an orange tabby that the neighbors have, and they take the cat and let the cat walk around the hall, which is completely fine. She sees the cat, and she's kind of okay, and then we get her into the vestibule on the other side of the glass, and that's when she goes crazy and wants to attack. And I don't know if it's attack or play, but she just starts crying, like it's kind of funny. Anyway, so we got her outside, and she's fine now, but she's wrapped up like a burrito in a blanket on her bed because she got cold, and normally she'd be sniffing around here. Nope, she's still on her bed wrapped in a blanket. So the 10 minutes we were out, she got a chill.
Okay. Yes, I was explaining to the kids at the beginning, going, I'm sitting there and I'm watching a chair. So, but you were on doggy duty.
Yes. And then of course I have to come in, take a quick shower, and get dressed. So yeah. So, anyway, all done. So, I really had a hard time waking up this morning. And
have you been drinking enough water?
Yeah, I drank a lot of water last night.
Okay.
I had to pee several times in the middle of the night. So yeah, no, and of course, any man who has a lady partner will discover that usually the lady partner has 9 glasses of water spread throughout the bedroom so that you can hear the laughter.
Yes.
every 3 feet or every meter, there's a glass of water. So if she has to get up to pee, she can take a sip and then take a sip on the way back in from the other one. And then there's a bottle of water beside the bed. I'm like, if I drank as much water as she did, I would probably pee my pants constantly.
Hello. And kids, you may see me swinging my arms around. For some reason, I do not know how they got here, but overnight, 4 flies got into this room. And yes, we have flies in the house already. And
it's a little chilly out.
I know. I think maybe that's why they're in today. And as soon as the music started for the countdown, 4 appeared out of nowhere and all simultaneously dive bombed me. So I was like, whoa. So you may see me do this a couple of times.
That'll make sense as to why then.
Yeah. I'm not seeing things. All right, kids and cubs, to make good on a promise, because yesterday I was really interested, given that former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is laying in state, and I had heard that the leaders of the parties had paid tribute to Prime Minister Mulroney in the House of Commons with his wife, his now widow, and 4 children in presence. And you heard a couple of clips here and there about stuff, about what people said. If you've been paying attention to the news, they always take a little sound clip. But the one I was interested in was the leader of the opposition, Miss Elizabeth May. Now, I was interested for 2 reasons. One, because she's not allowed to speak unless she gets the full unanimous consent of the House.
Yes.
Because she doesn't have official party status yet. And there have been a couple of times, sometimes like on International Women's Day or something like that, where some knave, I assume from the conservative ranks, says no.
Yeah.
And doesn't allow her to speak.
Yeah. International Women's Day won't allow the woman member of parliament who's the leader of the party to speak.
Yeah.
That's a good look, asshole.
Yeah, well, that happened in Ontario this year. It was Doug Ford's Ontario Progressive Conservatives. That there was a motion to allow 4 or 5 women to speak, and they said no. Apparently, something happened afterwards that did finally allow it. But the first instinct was, no, I'll speak for you. Women's Day. But there have been several instances where that permission has been denied. Now, she spoke for about 11 minutes, maybe a little under 11 minutes. I think they get 10 minutes in the House for this type of thing. So there's we have an 11-minute clip. I was looking at it to pick something, and I couldn't. So I'm just going to play it because the interesting thing yesterday, and I didn't know it before I said it, that I was interested to hear what she was going to say, is that throughout the day, listening to the news, even like the 5-minute news recap, like what's going on right now,
they showed the whole
all
thing.
of them, no, didn't show the whole thing, but featured or spoke about what it is that she said.
Okay. Well,
They only played a little clip, like a 5 or 10 seconds of what Pierre Poilievre had to say and whatnot, and then they moved on. And Joe Clark said something and whatnot, but they all made a point of mentioning.
Joe Clark?
Yeah, Joe Clark was
also
in the
House.
No, not in the House. They got him in the scrum
confused.
yesterday.
Okay.
But they were showing, and Aaron O'Toole made a comment yesterday and whatnot. And we have all that. We might have all that stuff on another day, but everywhere it was near unanimous. People were singling out what it is that Miss May had to say and how much passion she had when she did say it.
Well, they did work very closely together, so.
Yeah, they did. So I figured I should just bring it to you because this is a moment in politics that we do not have enough of. And I do not know why we wait until people die until we have them.
Okay, well, let's just, whoops, sorry. That wasn't supposed to happen. Well, here, let's just air the clip.
Oh, I'm down here. For people listening at home, I went down to the bottom right-hand corner.
Let's just the clip here. Oops, I got to turn the sound down.
So the first few minutes is the first few moments is them actually making sure that the Speaker of the House asking if she has unanimous consent or not.
Right, okay.
Nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried. The honourable member from Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you. À toute la famille de...
To all of our former Prime Minister's family, Mila, Mark, Carolyn, my sincerest condolences.
Very huge honor and very unlikely event in the life of a very passionate non-conservative to serve as a member of the staff team for the Minister of Environment and ultimately over the years to become a friend of Brian Mulroney. I've never said this to the family, but I used to have this recurring dream after I resigned from the office, and there was a certain amount of bad blood from the other Conservatives, never Brian Mulroney, about me leaving over my minister doing this little thing like breaking the law. And the thing about it was, I had this recurring dream that I kept running up to Brian Mulroney to say, I hope you know I love you. It was weird because I didn't know I felt that way when I was having this dream, but I had it over and over again. And then we got to be friends. And we became friends when I felt compelled as executive director of Sierra Club to write articles to say, look at this legacy, hello. And I was on the jury for who should be the greenest prime minister. And it wasn't close. This was in 2005. It wasn't like there were a lot of prime ministers who had that kind of record. So in thinking about my remarks today, I've decided there's no way I can actually speak to each of the accomplishments of the Mulroney government and of Brian Mulroney quite personally picking up the phone and putting the negotiations to stop the logging of Guayahanas, putting them back into play by calling Bill Vander Zalm and this was hard work and heavy lifting, and it was personal. Where it came from, I can't tell you, but I know it was profound and real and personal on issue after issue. So I've decided the only way I can get through them is to list them. I can hardly editorialize on the accomplishments because they are so many. But let's start with, under the category of under-promising and over-delivering, the multinational effort to deal with acid rain to actually solve the issue, to make every meeting with the President of the United States of America our single top bilateral issue was an environmental issue, it was acid rain every time. Then it was the ozone layer. We didn't just put in place some ideas. Brian Mulroney quite literally saved all life on Earth when Canada stood up and organized the Montreal Protocol and saved the ozone layer so that now just is no longer being eroded, it's repairing itself. And I was never so proud as to see him at the 30th anniversary of the Montreal Protocol in Montreal when he even mentioned me in his speech there. We were there in the same Congress where it was negotiated in September 1987. The Montreal Protocol is an astonishing accomplishment for this country, but it was Brian Mulroney personally who delivered it. It was the first international conference on the climate crisis in the last week of June 1988, which former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney opened and gave a speech that brought the House down and brought scientists from all around the world to their feet to cheer for what Stephen Schneider, one of the leading climate scientists, said, "My God, this is our Woodstock." Prime Ministers also, Gro Harlem Brundtland of Norway, opened that conference, the first one. But then the work kept going. The work to acknowledge and support the World Commission on Environment and Development and their landmark report, Our Common Future, to lead at the United Nations, to create the Earth Summit for June 1992, to lead with heavy lifting to deliver the Treaty for the Protection of Biological Diversity. And this is one of the hallmarks I was going to mention at the end. The things that Brian Mulroney did, not just standing up to his enemies, that's easy, standing up to his friends. So that when he saved the Biodiversity Convention, and he did quite personally save it, when George Bush tried to kill it, he was standing up to his friends. When he stood up to throw South Africa out of the Commonwealth, he had to stand up to his friend whom he loved, Maggie Thatcher, because it was wrong to ignore apartheid and let South Africa be a member of the Commonwealth family. He stood up against his friends, and he stood up to Ronald Reagan on acid rain, and he delivered an agreement between Canada and the US that actually ended the scourge of acid rain pollution in Canada. He banned lead in gasoline. He banned the herbicide that was carcinogenic, Alachlor. He brought in the environmental legislation we still have, and some of which has been tragically repealed. He brought in the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. He brought in the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act. He brought in Canada's only federal water policy, and he created new institutions, only some of which we still have. He brought in the National Roundtable on Environment and Economy. He created the International Institute for Sustainable Development. He created the post of Ambassador for the Environment. He did the early work that led to the creation of the Arctic Council. He brought in the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreements, multilateral agreements between many levels of governments, provinces, and federally. And he brought in the national parks, one after the other, Katatina Park, which was then we called Ellesmere, creating that on Ellesmere. On Guayahanas, we talked earlier today in the House of the news of what's been done for the Haida, with the Haida Nation and acknowledging their sovereignty. But for Brian Mulroney to fly to Vancouver Island to sign the deal with Premier Van der Zalm, and I'll never forget Pat Carney, another dear friend we lost this year, saying to all the men gathered there, you know, a lot of what you've done in your political careers will be forgotten, but this will last. This will always be remembered. Guayahanas National Park, Canada's Galapagos, personally saved by Brian Mulroney. Yes, all the Haida elders who blocked the logging roads and got arrested can't take the thing away from their courage. But the personal courage of the elders who blocked the logging road would have come to a historical footnote if Brian Mulroney hadn't been willing to get a deal and get Bill Van der Zalm back to the negotiating table. Grasslands National Park, Pacific Rim National Park, Georgian Bay National Park, the early work on the Rouge Valley. Making poverty history, The best international development funding record Canada has ever had, the closest we've ever come to the Pearson target, was under Brian Mulroney when we still had a Canadian International Development Agency. Our funding commitments under Brian Mulroney were the most generous of Canada's whole history in international development, stepping up to respond to the Ethiopian famine. The problem is with this kind of resume, not only can you not pad it, you can't even list it and not run out of time. How did he do all this? Well, he had skills and talents. Being Irish, I can only suspect he actually physically once kissed the Blarney Stone. There's no real way to explain how he could charm the birds out of the trees, but he sure as heck could. And he could make people laugh. I loved his jokes so much. I feel like that old joke where you could just give the punchlines and the family will know which ones were the best. But, do you know who I am? I'm the man who gives out the butter. These were great jokes. They made the timing, his comic timing was perfect. But one thing about Brian Mulroney's humor, and he was great at it, there was never a joke at anyone's expense. There was never a cruel joke. And if there was ever a joke at someone's expense, it was his own self-deprecating humor at his own expense. Talking about the time back in 2005 when he missed the first award dinner for his being the greenest prime minister. And he talked about it later, about being in hospital, and some old guy who looked pretty rough looking at him and saying, "Did you used to be Brian Mulroney?" But he could at your lowest moments, he could make you laugh, and that's another thing that I just can't say enough, how grateful I am and how deeply honored I am, and there's no explaining the generosity and the kindness of his heart. That when I was having low moments now and then, I couldn't believe it when my office would say, former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney wants to talk to you on the phone. Are you kidding me? I'd love to tell you what he said, but it's so darn funny, but I really can't repeat it. Dear Brian Mulroney, there aren't any pearly gates anywhere near this place. Like a bat out of hell, one would say, but still, I know where there's a proper welcome and open arms and angelic choirs for someone who deserved and deserves to come home. God bless you and your family and your children and your grandchildren and all who loved you. You lived well and you loved this country. Let us continue to try to meet that example of a good-hearted, kind, spirited, generous, and brilliant Canadian.
Here, here.
And that, Kits and Cubs, is why Miss Elizabeth May is frequently selected as the person most admired by her own peers.
I'm gonna address a comment here from Carpet Bomber. Not the kids can't see it because it's from Twitter. I'll put it on the screen and I'll address it quickly. I believe in climate change and respect Miss May, but I think this is a little too dramatic and over-embellishing of Mulroney. He did some good things, but he never wore a halo. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to agree with you, actually. What? This was a close, dear friend who was lamenting the loss of a close, dear friend. And she's going to triumph the goodness that he did. We all know about the badness. We know about the cash stuffed envelopes. We know these things. I've got a book written by Stevie May called On the Take.
Mm-hmm.
It's about, oh my God, it must be 30 years old now, the book.
Yeah, probably.
And it details, well-researched book, details all of the wrongdoings and the crookedness. But this is an individual, Elizabeth May, the Green Party, who's concerned about the environment. That's her party's stance, is environment first. So, you know, she was paying a heartfelt tribute to the greenest prime minister ever, right? So, you know, I get it.
Yep. By the way, on the take was Stevie Cameron.
Stevie Cameron. Thank you.
Yep. And, yes, he didn't wear a halo. But all that huge list of accomplishments on the environment and that huge list of accomplishments in other places. And she didn't mention things like Charlottetown and Meach and GST and free trade, all of them, which were what we call in French des projets de société. Huge, large, socially transformative initiatives. Some that worked for him, some that failed. He failed on Charlottetown and on Meach to actually get the full agreement passed, but he did get everybody to agree on something to vote on in the first place twice.
Yep.
An attempt to bring Quebec back into the Constitution, and then free trade did go ahead, and GST did go ahead, and his work on apartheid, his work on getting a lot of environmental institutions and measures off the ground. So it's like when we look back in the United States, we talk about Richard Nixon having formed the EPA. We look at 2024, we'd never consider anybody on the right-hand side of the spectrum of wanting to do anything whatsoever for the environment. But there was a time
when that was the other side of the coin. It was the other story.
Well, there was back in the time when we used to call it environmental conservation. So therefore conservatives were into it. But then it switched. We got caught in the culture war thing instead. Pardon, I have a frog in my throat.
That's okay. And I'm going to go back to his years as prime minister. I was not a fan at all. I wasn't. I was not a fan. I am going to acknowledge all of the good he did. I will also fully acknowledge a lot of the things he did I completely disagree with. Privatizing Air Canada being one of them. That was
selling off our vaccine stuff.
Yeah, we used to manufacture our own vaccines. He sold
we
that
used
off.
To be a world leader.
That's right. We will be again because we're redoing it. But who's bringing that in?
Current prime minister now.
Liberal leader. So, yeah, look, you cannot sum up a person's life by only the bad things or the mistakes they made. And you cannot sum up a person's life by only the good things they did. It's called nuance, and we all have it. And we're all going to make mistakes. And as we get older, we learn and we try to do better each and every day, because when you know better, you do better. It's one of the mottos of the show that Mr. Beaver brought to us. And here's the thing. I agree with it. When you know better, you do better. Or at least most of humanity tries to do better. Some people, Pierre Poilievre, Donald Trump, 2 examples, are people who just are going to do whatever the hell they want because they're convinced they're right. And they're total narcissists, and we're stupid, so they're going to do what they want to do. But most of humanity, when you learn a better way to do something, most of humanity will do it. So I think Brian Mulroney recognized that, because who did he support? The current prime minister, the Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau. He said, he's the man. He's the guy. He's the progressive. What did John Baird say? The most progressive leader? And remember how he got slapped down the next day? Because I'm sure Mr. Harper took him to the woodshed on that one.
Indeed. Yes, and Carpet Bomber makes a comment here. And yes, I would have been very interested in hearing what Clyde Wells or Gary Feldman had to say today.
Today, especially, yeah.
Yes, but, Brian Mulroney has not been prime minister since 1993.
It's been 31 years.
Yeah, so with 31 years distance, what would they have said about him? It might be a little different than what people might expect. Might be, maybe not.
Who knows?
Maybe they took those 30 years and said, kept on cursing his name under their breath every time they heard it, too.
Well,
it's quite possible, too. Trust me, there was a lot to curse.
Some people let time heal wounds. Some people make the wounds bigger. Case in point, 2 CFL guys from years ago at a CFL reunion. They were on the opposite side of teams. And they had a fight 50 years ago. They were sitting on a stage and started beating the hell out of one another with their canes. They still hated each other after 50 years from a single event in a Grey Cup game. So some people hold on to it. Some people let it go. It's up to you to decide how you want to live your life. Holding on to a grudge, holding on to anger and hatred, holding on to that will only age you, harm you, and make your life miserable. It's up to you to decide how you want to live. I can't tell you that, but hanging on to grudges won't do you or anybody else any good. And here's the thing, the person you have the grudge with, they probably don't even know or don't even care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know sometimes people ask me, what do you think about XX person, whatnot? And if it's a person that is sometimes I've not had a positive experience with, my typical answer is, I don't.
I don't think about them at all. What? Why not? Shouldn't you have an opinion? Nope. You know, here's the thing.
Nope.
You don't have to have an opinion on every single damn thing. You don't. Sometimes you can just let it go and let a little bit more storage space in the brain for happy things instead of miserable things. Yep. What do you think about this person? I don't.
I don't. Just not worth my time. It's not
Until you brought their name up. I hadn't thought about them in years.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let it go, man. Let it go. Isn't that the song from, what is it?
Yes, Frozen.
Disney? Thank you, Frozen. Let it go. And
anyway.
That's good. That's good. You had me for a minute.
Fake Frozen acting. Genius.
Wasn't that also a song by Luba? Let it go.
Yes, as well.
Let it free your body. Let it
move its own.
That's there you go.
That song. I love that song a lot.
I was a big fan of Luba.
That was the first time, actually, that song, Let It Go, that I watched a music video and noticed somebody and wondering, is that person gay?
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they had that whole scene when they're in that, like, sort of like the blimp type balloon thing with the basket. Like, they got old people dancing. And there was one tall guy somewhere, like, in the middle, maybe a little to the right of the screen, who was like just dancing away with them in the group, but like my eye just immediately was drawn to that person. It's like, is that person like representing? I didn't know the term representing, but that was like my thought at the time. It was like, just like, gee, I wonder, like this is only flashed on the screen like for a couple of seconds, but it was the first time I got a sense that there might have been someone on TV,
right,
who was like me.
Yeah, I'm sure that was an eye-opening moment for you.
Yeah.
This thing from Scrappy McBuckyball more than 10 years ago, a journalist doxed me on another platform, and I held a grudge with him for years before I let it go. But you let it go, right? And I bet you your life improved when you did that, because that anger was gone. You know, sometimes you can let something go. When somebody's harmed you, you can let it go without forgiving them, and you can still be okay. Personally, I try and forgive them, even if I don't say to them, I forgive you. If I forgive them in my own mind, I can let it go completely and move on. Just a little bit. I guess that's my advice for today, my words of wisdom for today, really early in the show.
There you go. And for kids who happen to be on Twitter, friend of the pod, Craig Beard, who has the Canadian History A or X.
Great Twitter, great show.
Yeah, website is doing this thing where he's having people vote on what is Canada's greatest song. So he started with over like 128 songs or something, or even more than that before, because he had people vote to actually who's going to. People got to vote to add the songs and then the ones that got most of the vote got put into this random generator where they got put into like this bracket, I guess, and right now he's in round 2. We're down to the top 64. So if ever you're following him, give him a little click, because especially if you like Luba, because every now and then a Luba song comes along.
I'm just putting.
I don't know if every time I don't know if every time I see your picture made it past the first round, but that was like her signature song.
Yeah, her signature song, and it was the one that brought her to the forefront of Canadian radio. Yeah. Because at the time, I mean, we're going back to the 80s when Canadian artists were still struggling to get heard.
Yeah.
And there was a group of Canadian artists that paved the way for what the 90s became, because at one point in the 90s, 8 of the top 10 songs in Canada were by Canadian artists. And that was not just a 1-week thing. That was like for about 4 years. Sometimes it was all top 10 songs were Canadian artists. The 90s it started in the 70s with Pierre Junot setting the CanCon rules. That's why they're called the Juno Awards, by the way.
Right.
And then that moved on from there to the 80s, which Much Music and Factor which was the Canadian program to help fund artists to film music videos. So Much Music helped break a lot of Canadian artists. And then the 90s, well, we all know about the 90s and how that broke through with grunge and metal and rock and, all sort of started with Nirvana, if you will. And then the explosion of Canadian artists in the 90s led way to the early 2000s when Nickelback came in and rocked the world and is still doing it. Mm-hmm. This Is How You Remind Me came out on September 11th, 2001. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember.
That was the moment that changed things, right?
Yeah, so I remember a time not too long ago, I think that the number one country artist in the world was Shania Twain. The number one jazz artist in the world was Diana Krall. Mm-hmm. The number one pop artist in the world was Celine Dion. And I think there was the number one rock artist in the world was Alanis Morissette, all at the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you. And for those, since we're going a little bit down memory lane and the Junos are coming up, Luba was nominated for 12 Junos and won 4, including Female Vocalist of the Year in 87, Best Video for How Many Rivers to Cross in 1986, which is probably her second signature song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was How Many Rivers to Cross. The Earth and Sky, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was an amazing song.
I have it on vinyl.
Yeah, Female Vocalist of the Year in 86 and Female Vocalist of the Year in 85. So basically, Female Vocalist of the Year 3 years running.
Yeah.
And then, nominated for a whole bunch of other ones anyway along the way. So there you go.
And if you're watching us on the Twitter feed somewhere and you want to join in the chat here, I will put our link on the screen. It's not a clickable link. You'd have to type it in, unfortunately, but it's YouTube / True North Eager Beaver Media. We'll take you directly to our YouTube channel where you can join in the chat with all the other folks that are here. There's currently about 1,000 people watching across multiple platforms in the live feed. But if you want to join in the chat with the Damn Fam on our YouTube channel, you can do so at YouTube / True North Eager Beaver Media.
All right. Now, the other thing I promised you that we would talk about today, Kits and Cubs, was that vote we had in the House of Commons on the motion, the NDP proposed motion. Now, remember, Kits and Cubs motions are not legally binding and have no teeth, and I don't think that they can... oh, no, those are private members' bills with money. I'm not sure if motions have anything that you can do with money or not, so don't quote me on that one. And the vote originally was supposed to be on an NDP motion to recognize the Palestinian state. Now, this comes on the back of a lot of things that maybe didn't get a lot of play that happened elsewhere, but in the United States last week, the leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, got up and made a speech. And it was a speech that was heard around the world. The only way it could have been sent more shockwaves is if it had come out of the mouth of the president himself. But I'm guessing it came from the mouth of the Senate leader so that there could still be a little amount of distance away from the president so that maybe something else can be negotiated. But during that speech, Chuck Schumer, who I do believe is Jewish, if I'm not mistaken, called out Israel in a very, very impressive way, and even suggested or outright called for new elections in Israel. It seems that there was also some talk about exporting to Israel in the future defensive weapons only. So things that would help with the Iron Dome, but not offensive weapons, and maybe the United States refusing its typical move of using its veto at the United Nations on resolutions that would single out Israel. The main problem here is that President Benjamin Netanyahu, or Prime Minister Netanyahu, is considering a full invasion of the city of Rafah in the Gaza region, and the United States is basically calling this impending offensive campaign a red line. They really, really do not want Netanyahu to do this. Netanyahu is basically saying, well, his mission is not over and he needs to absolutely go down there to eradicate Hamas completely, and he's not listening to anyone, but the United States is saying, this... how would you put it? Unconditional support that you've been used to getting from us since 19 whatever may have a few conditions and limits to it now. Parallel to that, you have the UN Food Agency reporting, and this happened a few hours after President Biden had a phone call with Netanyahu, that it's no longer a matter of whether or not if there will be famine in Palestine, but when. And in the north, it's pretty much imminent. About 70% of the roughly 300,000 Palestinians living in Gaza are facing catastrophic hunger, according to the UN Food Agency's report. And it seems that leaders of certain nations and certain multilateral organizations are accusing the government of Israel of using starvation as a weapon of war. So
That's what he's doing.
Yeah. So that's what's going on sort of in the background there. Trudeau, our prime minister, spoke with the war cabinet member, Benny Gantz. He's probably more to the right on this issue than Netanyahu himself, and expressed concern that Israel's planned offensive on the southern city of Rafah, where about 500,000 displaced Palestinians are seeking shelter, is probably not a good idea. Israel is also sending a team of high-ranking officials to the United States to discuss its plans to invade Rafah. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that it would be a mistake that would take too many civilian lives. So he actually literally called it a mistake before they're doing it. And the United States are sending Secretary of State Anthony Blinken back to the region so he can talk. And I have a feeling, if I'm not mistaken, that Netanyahu is in the United States and might be addressing the Senate specifically. Don't quote me on that one. It's just a little thing I heard on the news, and I wasn't sure if I understood it correctly, but that's the sense I got from what I heard. So that's the background. In the United States, as you know, there's a movement from Arab Americans to put pressure on Mr. Biden to pay attention to this, which has manifested itself most notably in the primary in Michigan, where they got people to vote uncommitted, and over about 10% or 11% of people did, which certainly got the attention of the administration. As you also know, in the Democratic Party and in the Liberal Party, you are more likely to have people as members of the party who see one side or the other side of the issue as the one most deserving of being supported. In the NDP, it's more heavily pro-Palestinian. In the Conservative Party, it's more heavily pro-Israel. And in the Liberal Party, you actually do see people taking either side or taking more moderate sides. But let's just say the spread is wider, so it's harder to satisfy everyone because it's impossible. As soon as you say something positive about Israel, people defending the Palestinian side get upset. And as soon as you say something, that's somewhat conciliatory to the concept that Palestinians are not Hamas, then, everybody just turns around and says, why are you supporting or propping up Hamas? So a lot of people don't want nuance to be part of this conversation, but it is because it exists. And to that end, the NDP was trying to present a motion that the Canadian government should recognize the state of Palestine, working towards a two-state solution. Now, we have a problem with that politically, however. Two problems. On the left side, the statement is, well, how do you fight for a two-state solution if you're not going to recognize before you do that Palestine does constitute a state? And that was the NDP position. The more conservative side of the position is anytime someone makes a comment like when our Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, said that we would have to negotiate with Hamas with regard to freeing the hostages, but any negotiations about what the future of Israel and Palestine as two states living side by side would be could not involve Hamas. They forgot that second part. They just pretended she didn't say that second part and only dealt with the first one. Said, what do you mean we're going to deal with negotiations to deal with Hamas to determine the future of Israel? It's not what she said. But as soon as you start to make that type of conciliatory statement, there's already somebody there willing to say, I can't believe you gave Hamas a win. And sometimes that's even from within your own party, as was the case with MP Anthony Housefather. And there was another Liberal MP whose name I do not know off the top of my head, but both of them voted along with the Conservatives on this particular motion.
Mhm.
And Anthony Housefather is actually openly stating that he's reconsidering whether or not he can remain a member of the Liberal Party. It's that meaningful to him.
Well, he said recognizing the rights of Palestinian people to a state of their own is his red line.
Yeah. So he's having a problem with that. Personally, being an MP in Canada, I have difficulty seeing how you could put that issue above the national issue here in Canada. But I also know that when you are a member of a certain ethnic group and something terrible is happening, sometimes you choose that. That's enough to make you put that first. And everybody's different, and there's no right or wrong answer here. I just find it interesting as an elected MP that, for example, the situation of how Jewish people are being treated in Canada as a result of what is going on over there is not the bigger concern.
No kidding. Well, hate crimes against the Jewish community has gone up 93% since October.
Yeah. So, but again, that's my personal opinion. I don't know what his personal attachment is. He might have many, many family members living there.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And there is no wrong decision. Like I said, I'm just saying, as an MP, specifically in his role as MP, I find prioritizing something that's going on outside our borders over what's going on inside our borders an interesting choice. Doesn't mean that it's the wrong one.
People keep asking me to comment on the war. I feel bad for the innocents on both sides that are getting harmed by men in positions of power who don't give a shit about the people. That's my take. That's it. Yeah. I've got nothing more to say than that because I don't understand the issue enough to make a comment that is sensible in any way, shape, or form. I know it's been going on for thousands of years. I know that it's a complex situation, and I know that Netanyahu is a tyrant and Hamas are tyrants. And people are caught in the crossfire. Innocent people. Children are dying. They're starving people. Am I taking a side? Yeah, I'm taking the side of the innocents who are getting harmed by all of this. That's my side. I just want people to be able to live in peace and harmony. That's all I got to say about it. I mean, what more can I add to the conversation?
Yeah,
I'm not Jewish, I'm not Palestinian, and I live in Canada.
Right. And when you don't have... I have no horse in the race one way or the other. Right? I keep on mentioning exactly. I have friends who are Jewish who are very affected by what's going on, and I have friends who are Arab who are very affected by what's going on, and I'm just trying to be a good friend to both.
Precisely.
As much as I can, right? And it's not an obvious thing, and this is, I mean, people are dying.
Yep.
Look, it doesn't get more real. It doesn't get more emotional. It doesn't appeal more to the passions than this, right? So there are very few wrong answers. There's a lot of this is just what's real for you. And, we have to hold space for that. Now, the motion, I would put it, was originally supposed to recognize Palestine as a state immediately. And the Bloc Québécois had announced before that it would side with the NDP going into it. The Liberals had decided that it would be a free vote for the backbenchers. Most likely cabinet was whipped to vote in one direction, which would have been originally against this motion. That's how it looked like it was going to happen. But instead, there were some negotiations on the wording of the motion, and it led to a vote of 204 in favor of it and 117 against. The 117 being mostly all the members of the Conservative Party and a couple members of the Liberal Party who voted with them. Now, the amendments, one would say, softened the language of the original NDP motion. but it led to all the members of the BQ, most of the members of the Liberal, all the members of the NDP, and all the members of the Green being able to vote for it. The amended motion urges Canada to actively pursue the establishment of a Palestinian state as part of a negotiated two-state solution, but not pre-recognition of the state, as was the case in the original motion. A couple of other amendments that came in. The Liberal amendment changed basically 7 of the 9 components of the original motion. And for example, dropping the recognition of Palestine was one of the amendments. There was other language changed, and there was a demand added that Hamas lay down their arms, which was not another one. It was release the hostages, but not lay down their arms. So that was added to it. And then the motion commits Canada to stop arms sales to Israel and commits Canada to support the prosecution of all violations of international law in the region in the future. And there was probably some softening of wording here to maybe, this one I'm not sure, but for the prosecution of all violations of international law rather than violations from Israel, for example. And the motion commits Canada to stop arms sales to Israel, and I'm guessing that would probably be future arms sales, but maybe not stopping the honoring of current contracts. That's usually that type of wording allows, like, henceforth we will not, but whatever is still in play we will keep doing, as opposed to, because there are 2 levels when you stop selling arms. You know, they're the ones where you break the contracts immediately in place and you just, put a screeching halt to it. And then there are the ones where, okay, we'll keep on respecting the engagements that we have in place, but no more after that. So there may have been some subtle changes like that to be able to make those kind of things. I haven't, there's a tweet out there that does have a side-by-side comparative read from the beginning to the first one and the second one that I will take a look at later to see if there's anything else that I can pick out. But that seems to be the main thing that has gone on over there, and that's the whole battle. The Liberals seem to have gotten some praise from most parts from being able to bring in this amendment that would allow more people to agree and make the motion slightly less divisive. We know for a fact that strategically the Conservative Party of Canada have decided that their bread is better buttered, going in full in for I don't even know how to say this in the right way, because I'm going to put, I'm not particularly convinced that the Conservative support, as firm as it is for the Israel side, is strictly a decision that is made out of the goodness of their hearts to support Israel. I do believe that there is a financial component related to it. I know that, how would I put it? The Conservative Party likes to play on established tropes. So, for example, we mentioned it a lot with the Muslim community. The established trope is that they are inherently violent and aggressive. And so, therefore, for example, when it comes to trying to keep gay people down, like as we saw this summer, fighting against trans rights, then they try to rally that community to its side, hoping that it will live true to the stereotype of them being aggressive and violent and whatnot, and will cause that disruption. We all know that the most famous trope with regard to Jewish people involves things having to do with money. And I personally believe that the Conservative Party of Canada looks at Canada's Jewish community more as a piggy bank for donations.
Oh, I would believe that in a heartbeat. I have no issue with believing that. I have no qualms with that statement whatsoever.
I know, but we're playing into tropes here like this, and that's why I'm trying to find the delicate words to be able to speak of this, because, when you hold an all-night vote-a-thon and go to Hanukkah first day of Hanukkah menorah lighting ceremony and say, I stand with you, the Jewish people, as you're voting no
Against them,
to
yeah.
funding a Holocaust museum and a
Yeah.
Jewish community center in 2 different cities. How much support do you really have for the
He's
Jewish
talking out of
community?
both sides of his mouth.
Really? Yeah. So I, and just as, just on the other side, one can make as cynical a point about the liberals. Well, they sat there in the back room with their liberal B counters and a calculator, and they calculated 1.8 million Muslims in Canada versus 400,000 Jewish people, and they went on the side of the votes, click, 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 and that's where their position is, right? Other than the fact, then, you know what? Yeah, I've been on this planet for 50 years, and other than the time when we got to the Oslo Accord negotiations, there was never really any sense that any true move for peace that could be lasting was ever in full good faith engaged in. And that there have been certain people, Netanyahu being one of them, who have decided that it's probably in their best long-term interest politically to be a major obstacle to any real lasting peace. Well, yeah, we'll negotiate. We'll get right twice there, and then, we'll sign stuff. And then at the last minute, but there's this one reason. Sorry, I just can't let that one go. I guess we'll go back to doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last 60, 70 years.
Yeah. Well.
So I've never felt convinced myself that there's a way, and
I don't know that there is.
Maybe there isn't. That's the whole point, right?
Like, honestly, I don't know that there is. And I don't have any answers. I don't have any solutions. Let's everybody sit down at the table. We'll have a cup of coffee and see what we can figure out. And you know what we'll figure out? Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing, because it's thousands of years of my side hates your side. You're both praying to the same God, and your religion, both of them observe most of the same things.
Yeah. So I could say, I won't count.
You don't drink,
Yeah. I won't count the first 10 years of my life because I wasn't that politically aware. But let's say, for the last 40 years of my life, it's literally been one person does something, another person reacts, we retaliate. World War II happened, so therefore, the Holocaust was horrible. So therefore, Israel, we always the first line, Israel has a right to defend itself.
Yes.
And it does. All sovereign nations do.
That's not up for debate.
That's not up for debate. And then we, but it's presented often as if we're trying, that side's trying to be debated. But I've also seen X number of, 40 years of, people just being killed. And things not getting better. I've been seeing 40 years of settlements. I've been seeing 40 years of the more extreme settlers doing things to Palestinians. But I've also seen 40 years of, PLO not keeping its word, and Hamas doing atrocious things. And, I can understand, just like we are noticing that there are people in younger generations who don't seem to know as much as maybe they should about the Holocaust. Because if we talk about my parents were alive when it happened.
Yeah.
My mom was born in 1939.
Well, my dad was. He was born in 41. So he was very young when it happened, but he was alive.
But they were born when it happened, right? It's like they have their parents telling them if they were older, if they were too young. But we now have generations of people who may have been born to people who weren't alive during World War II. And therefore it gets distant. Yeah. Then it's not something that someone who's alive saw on TV, on the news. Right now it literally is in the history books that you're learning it, and you're learning from people. So with that distance of people not being so alive, that's why when we talk about World War I, we have so very few veterans left alive get their stories while they're alive, because there will be no one there. And the only people we're going to be hearing about it now is secondhand and third hand. There'll be no more first-hand accounts.
Well, I don't think there's no World War I vets. They're all gone. They have been for a few years. And World War II vets are there's not many left.
Yeah. So, but I remember in that, Remembrance Day ceremonies, when we still had First World War I vets alive, it was like, like make sure we talk to them. It's very important, because once you get that distance of there being nobody alive yet left in that generation to tell you firsthand what it was like, that's when it becomes much more easy to have those interpretations. Oh, well, the Holocaust didn't really happen or wasn't really real. Well, do you know anybody who was there?
Yeah, well, that's why Eisenhower sent in camera crews and journalists to record and document everything. They took millions of photographs. He said, I want all of this documented, filmed, photographed, put into spreadsheets, ledgers, all of it. Document because some son of a bitch is going to come along someday and say it never happened. And we want to be able to show them that it did. It happened. We can't deny this. It took place.
It was humanity at its worst.
Worst.
Its basest. So, but as we're getting away from that, it becomes all the more important to be sure that the record is right, that we agree on the record.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you have a generation now, and this is what you're talking about, the younger people and younger progressives who have seen attempts for peace happen and Israel blowing them up. Attempts for peace happen and Israel blowing them up. Palestinian people being forced to live in an apartheid situation and nothing really improving over a period of 20 or 30 years for them. And with the way media works these days, and with the way social media works, and with the way that you can live in an echo chamber, it's very, 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 very easy to come up with the position that Israel has always, always, always been the bad guy. That Israel, the government of Israel, is exploiting the terrible thing that happened in World War II as license for it to do whatever it wants now.
And that's not.
You can't criticize us. This bad thing happened to us. And, people are wondering, like, how far do you get to run on that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think they've run out of runway on that one, okay? Because they keep using it as a trope. And it's like, yeah, never again. We fucking meant that. But you're committing it right now.
Yeah.
You're doing it.
Never again applies to you too.
Exactly.
Right? So that's why we take the position on the show that Palestinians are not Hamas and Israelis are not the current government of Israel. And therefore, as citizens, when it comes to talking to our fellow Canadians who happen to be of Jewish origin or Jewish heritage, and Canadians who happen to be of Arab heritage or Islamic faith, that we don't create that same trope.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't assume that Jewish Canadians are Netanyahu, and that Palestinian Canadians or Arab Canadians who are standing in solidarity with their brothers and sisters are Hamas.
That's it. Simple as that.
We are Canadians.
Yes. Period.
Who have people that we love and care about over there who are going through unimaginable.
We've seen the pictures. We've seen the video. We've seen the films. We've seen the suffering. And it's beyond anything any of us could tolerate because, we live pretty comfortable lives here in Canada. Even those of us who are, marginalized or suffering, maybe we're in poverty. Nobody is shooting at us. Nobody is bombing the hell out of us. Nobody is trying to purposely starve us. Nobody is taking over our hospitals and not allowing us to get treatment. That's not happening here. So no matter how bad you think your day is, somebody over there has it so much worse. So much worse.
And that's why it's all the more important for us as Canadian citizens with each other to be kind and gentle in this period. And I'm speaking even emotionally gentle.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to solve this here.
No.
And it's not our protests on the street and counter-protesting against each other here.
It's not going to do
That's going to solve it. Vandalizing Jewish community centers, firebombing mosques and synagogues like this. Not helping anyone. Not helping anyone.
It's harming people here that have nothing to do with what's going on over there. Then there'll be people, well, you're funding them. No, it's a no-win situation. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
And right now, as I mentioned in another show, maybe not here, I think it was on Blackballed when I was on the other day. Our federal government at the moment, and this would be true of any federal government, regardless of stripe, has a completely unenviable situation. I do not envy our government at all at this moment, because we live in a pluralistic nation. Where out of 40 million of us, or nearly 41 million of us, close to 2 million identify as Arab or Muslim.
Yes.
And close to 400,000, if not closer to 500,000, identify somehow as Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
On other sides. And both sides have people, Jewish or not, Arab or not, Islamic or not, who love and care about them. All my friends who are Jewish, even though I'm not Jewish at all, the most Jewish thing about me is that I was born at a Jewish General Hospital. That's it. Seriously, in Montreal. That's it. I have no time. And same thing with Arab.
Well, I'm
even though
circumcised, but that would be the closest thing for me.
Yes.
Or it was the
right?
60s. That was,
yes.
That's, you know.
So it's like, but even though I have this look, and even though sometimes I sit in a taxi cab and someone speaks to me in Farsi first, because I have nothing in common at all. Nothing biologically in my DNA or whatnot related to that. But I care.
Of course.
About my friends.
We don't want to see humanity suffering.
So, and if they have people over there that they love and care about, I care about that. And you know what? You don't even have to be my friend. You could be a total stranger to me. You have someone living over there who's living through this right now. You have my heart.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can't even begin to imagine. I have been so blessed to live my whole life in Canada. And I've never had to experience a moment like this. The closest moment was when Michael Ziaf Bibo did what he did. I think I was too young for the FLQ. I'm not even sure. I can't even remember what year it happened. I might not have even been born yet. Because I would have been very, very young. But that's the first, what happened on Parliament Hill that day, I guess not the War Memorial, was the closest to anything like that I've personally had any remote connection to.
The only other event I remember is in the late 80s, might have been 1990, I can't remember exactly, when a gentleman hijacked a Voyageur bus and had the driver drive it onto the hill. On Parliament Hill, and I think that was 89 or 90. I can't remember exactly when.
Yes, I remember that as well. Yeah,
that and the assault. I don't know if you can call it. Would you call that a terrorist attack? I guess I don't know. The guy's dead. You know, he was shot to death in the center block. So I don't know. But I do recall that event, watching it live on television as it unfolded, and I thought, okay, they're bringing out the negotiators, and then they said RCMP sharpshooters are positioned on buildings. I'm like, well, they better hope the negotiator does some negotiating, because those guys do not miss. And they were able to talk him down, and they were able to get him off the bus, and nobody was harmed in the end, which is what you want. And I can't even remember what he was protesting. Why he did that. I don't remember what it was for. Do you recall?
Nope, I don't remember.
Yeah. That's 35, 36 years ago, something like that. I'd have to go and look that up, but that's a difficult one. You know, the old memory banks aren't what they used to be. Multiple concussions to this dome.
Yeah.
We're going to have to wrap, sir. I got to get to the office.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that.
Yeah,
I an article here about it. Hopefully I'll be able to get it during the break. What happened? Kits and Cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless, and you have the mouths from which we want the word to come. So please tell all of your peeps and poops all about us. It makes us so very happy and it helps us out a lot. If you would like to support us in other ways, like, for example, not wanting to miss an episode, well, you don't have to, thanks to the Ray Girl, because she sponsored our Podpage site. It's podpage.com/The True North Eager Beaver, lowercase letters, with a hyphen between each one of those words, or you scan the QR code that just magically appeared underneath my goatee, and that will bring you to our Podpage site. If you subscribe there, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, you do not have to miss an episode. And we have Kit Ellen that says FLQ was in 1970. So yes, that was a little bit before my time. I don't even think I was a gleam in the eye at that point.
I was too.
If you would like to support us in other ways, make like Kit Elaine and go to our True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. And there we have 3 buttons for you to do what you want with. Like, share, subscribe, lick them, tweak them, click them. All of it helps us. It's so very much so.
That
Please
almost sounded
do
like that old tequila. Lick it, slam it, suck it.
Lick it, slam it, suck it, do it. Everybody
Salt,
click
slam.
that button. And if you would like to support us in yet another way, if you go to our coffee page, which you can do if you scan that QR code by Mr. Grizzly's lovely dome, or if you click in to your computer, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver. There you will find the Emergency Hydration Fund where you can make a donation to us, and that helps to ensure that our vocal cords remain saturated with moisture so that we can deliver this wonderful show that you all appreciate 5 days a week. And sometimes a little bonus stuff on the weekends too. Hey, you never know.
We do the podcast from time to time.
Yeah. So there you go. Anything that you can contribute there really helps us out. We had a donation yesterday. So thank you very much for the person who did that. And of course, we will have more appreciation later on, and we'll be able to do that, give you a shout out loud. All right, because democracy is something that you do, make sure you write those letters, Kits and Cubs. Make sure that you sign the Hamilton Helps petition if you can. Kit Dan gave us an update at the beginning of the show that Kit Angela will be having her meeting with Mayor of Hamilton, Andrea Horvath, at 11 a.m. this morning. Okay. Let's hope that she is able to be persuasive in person, because she certainly has been persuasive being on the sidewalk. Mm-hmm. So let's hope that persuasion continues, because we need our elected officials to make good decisions and to not make homelessness a policy choice. Mr. Grizzly, do you happen to have more words of wisdom? Because I know you got them out a little early about letting things go.
Well, choosing a side in this Israel-Palestine thing that's your decision to make. I'm not going to tell you what to decide, but I mean, try and remember the humanity of it all. There are children dying on both sides. People are starving. Their lives have been destroyed, all because a few men in power on each side of the dividing line want to eliminate the other. And all that does is harm innocence. And it's been going on for centuries. It's never going to end. And I don't know what to tell you about how to think. You got to think for yourself. You got to read as much information as you can, and hopefully you can form your own opinion. But I mean, honestly, choose the side of the innocents.
Yep. And none of us have any reason to believe that Palestinians love their children any more or less than Israelis love their own children.
Exactly.
Reminds me of that Sting song, Russians.
Mm-hmm. Love their children too. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Mr. Grizzly, please roll those credits and we'll have a couple of things in the Easter. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community. And The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, a couple of little notes here. Kit Cassie mentions to us that the province of Saskatchewan finally, quietly signed the healthcare deal with the feds. Minister Mark Holland brought about $560 million there. It seems that Premier Scott Moe is not going to be at the signing session in Regina because, of course, he can't be seen on video doing anything that suggests he might agree with Liberals. So that happened.
That would be a shame.
Yes. The answer to your question about what happened with the bus thing on the hill,
Yes.
it was a man who was trying to protest Syrian military involvement in Lebanon, thinking this tactic would attract media attention to the crisis. That's going on. At the World Women's Curling Championships, Team Canada had a big day yesterday facing the other two teams that were undefeated, Italy and Switzerland, who is undefeated in its last 47 games at the Worlds. And Canada delivered a defeat to both of them. The one to Switzerland happened relatively early in the match. Switzerland conceded. So Team Canada, I believe, is the only team that is perfect still, and they're currently on the ice against Japan. So let's cheer for them. And the inflation numbers came out yesterday. The core inflation number dropped down from 2.9 to 2.8, which was a little unexpected. People were thinking it might go up. But the bigger news is that core inflation, not including gasoline, which was at 3.2% the last time, has dropped down to 2.9%, which is better. And food inflation, which was at 3.4%, dropped all the way down to 2.4%, a full 1% in 1 month, which means for the first time since October 2021, food inflation is actually lower than core inflation.
That's good.
Which is exactly where we want to be.
Yes.
And you notice that Pierre Poilievre was nowhere.
Of course.
Nowhere thanking Trudeau for this, blaming Trudeau for this, or acknowledging that something good had happened for the economy or food prices.
Something bad, Trudeau bad. Something good, silence.
Yep. So those were the snippets. Do you have anything, Mr. Grizzly?
Yeah, I do. I have a clip. It's 17 seconds. It's from this hour, has 22 minutes, and it shows you what happens when Pierre Poilievre is off script and somebody says something that he doesn't necessarily like or agree with. I don't know if you had a chance to see this.
I did. I saw that it was going around, but I actually had to get to bed yesterday, so I hadn't watched it yet.
So, and we were going to watch the show last night, and we missed it. We got into something else. And anyway,
Little fly.
Yeah, I see that. Here's the clip.
Wow, Pierre Poilievre, such an honor to meet. My name is Dan, I'm with 22 Minutes. It's so nice to meet you. I think you're doing an amazing job. If it was up to me, you'd be the leader of the opposition for the rest of your life.
Well, I won't be, sadly, for you and you and your, but you know what?
Wow, Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah.
He's also standing very weird. I think somebody pulled the strings on the corset a little too tight.
Well, here's why did he skip out on a debate? That might have something to do with it.
That might have something. Because you're oh darn, why can't I remember the word duty head?
Well, I mean, come on.
He didn't have a snap back there.
Every time he was asked about children, puberty blockers, blah, 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 blah. Justin Trudeau is dividing Canada. That's not an answer to the fucking question.
I know. Kitche, roasted pigeon.
Yes, I believe that's a delicacy in some places.
Especially in the House of Commons cafeteria. Oh, excuse me.
Alrighty, I got to get out of here. I'm going to be late.
Delicious. Yum, yum, yum.
I'll see you.